Wokeism is so stupid. It's so stupid. And so many people believe it, which is incredible.
Wokeness seems to be everywhere these days, right? You can't scroll through Twitter, binge a Netflix show, or even grab a coffee without someone throwing the word around. But while some people are starting to back away from the term, Ben Shapiro is diving in headfirst, tearing it apart and leaving no stone unturned. And man, the woke crowd is furious. He's exposing the lies, the chaos, and the shifting rules. And you can bet they're not happy about it. But here's the real question. Is Ben onto something, or is he just stirring the pot?
Wokeism suggests that all inequalities of today are attributable to not only historic injustices, but also continuing injustices in the now, and that all disparities...
The term woke started out as something positive. It was all about being aware, especially of social injustices like racism and inequality. People on the left coined the term as a badge of honor, a way of saying, I'm paying attention to the problems in society. But somewhere along the way, it got twisted, and the same folks who embraced it have begun to shy away from it. Why? Because it's now become associated with over-the-top political correctness and divisive identity politics. Ben Shapiro isn't having it. He doesn't think we should stop using the word just because it's become toxic. In fact, he's sticking with it, arguing that if wokeness is a mess, that's on the people who turned it into a bad thing, not him. For Ben, wokeness isn't just a word, it's a whole set of flawed ideas. He sees it as a way to spread lies about America, twist the truth, and create confusion. In his view, wokeness is tearing apart the fabric of society, and no amount of rebranding can change that.
Okay, well, you have just used the word female and woman to define each other. So you say a woman is a female, but not a biological female. A female is a woman, and a woman is a female, but at no point have you added any new content.
No, I said a woman is someone who exists.
When Ben Shapiro talks about wokeness, he doesn't just see it as a cultural trend or a passing political fad. For him, it's much deeper than that. He believes that wokeness is built on a foundation of lies that distort some of the most important issues in society. In fact, Ben argues that there are 4 major lies at the core of woke culture. Lies about America, inequality, personal responsibility, and truth itself.
If we want to cite instances of racism that we can all find and fight together, that's something that I am more than willing to stand next to you and fight, because that's obviously stuff that we should fight together. But
First, he points to how wokeness spreads a distorted narrative about America. In his view, woke culture paints the country as inherently evil or deeply flawed, focusing only on its mistakes and failures while ignoring its strengths and accomplishments. For example, wokeness often highlights America's history of slavery and systematic racism, but according to Ben, it does so in a way that erases the progress the nation has made since then. He sees this as a dangerous oversimplification, turning America into a villain rather than a complex country that has worked hard to overcome its darker chapters.
they're not completely separable. If they are completely separable, then this means that identifying people by their subjective gender really has no relevance as to whether they are a male or a female. Male and female are biological terms.
The second lie, according to Ben, is about inequality. Woke culture often claims that inequality is entirely the result of systematic oppression, particularly based on race or gender. But Ben counters that this view is too narrow and ignores other factors like individual effort, personal choices, and cultural values. He believes that while inequality exists, not all of it can be blamed on social structures. To him, this one-dimensional view of inequality leads to policies that focus more on victimhood than on empowerment, which he thinks is a step backward rather than forward.
And I think that we need to make a distinction between cases where the administration is actively participating in the suppression of speech and cases in which the administration is trying to do the right thing in order to punish people for.
The third big lie in Ben's eyes is about personal responsibility. Wokeness, he argues, tends to shift the blame for individual problems onto society, stripping people of their own responsibility for their actions. Whether it's issues related to poverty, crime, or education, Ben believes woke culture encourages a mindset that says, it's not your fault, when in fact personal decisions play a significant role. By pushing this narrative, Ben argues that wokeness undermines the idea of individual accountability, which he sees as crucial for both personal growth and social progress.
I have a question.
I'm 20.
As a mathematician and a physicist, what in the hell do you know about human biology?
And you got your law degree from
deny it?
Harvard. What do you know about...
And then there is the fourth lie, the one Ben finds most troubling, about truth itself. Woke culture, he says, doesn't just twist facts, it redefines what truth even means. In the woke worldview, truth becomes subjective, shifting based on feelings or identity rather than objective reality. This is where Ben often brings up issues like gender, where woke culture insists that gender is entirely separate from biological genders. For Ben, this rejection of biological reality in favor of lived experiences is not only false but dangerous. He argues that by distorting the concept of truth, wokeness makes it impossible to have honest conversations about anything. Ben Shapiro doesn't just criticize wokeness as a flawed ideology, he goes further by comparing it to a kind of modern-day religion, or even a cult. He paints a picture where wokeness has its own set of beliefs, rituals, and high priests who dictate what's right and wrong. The catch? The rules are constantly changing, and no one can ever seem to keep up. It's like playing a game where the rules are rewritten every time you think you've figured them out, and the people in charge hold all the power.
With their community, or with God, or with religion, was just naturally in their daily lives. It's why the phrase that I've been using a lot on the show and in general is everybody needs to go outside and touch the grass.
Yeah, I like
this.
In Ben's view, wokeness has created a priesthood of intellectual elites. Think media figures, celebrities, and activists who act as gatekeepers deciding who is woke enough and who has fallen out of line. These elites get to set the standards, and if you don't follow their ever-shifting code, you're in trouble. What makes this even more confusing, Ben argues, is that the standards aren't set in stone. One day you might be praised for your progressive views, but the next day you might be condemned for not being progressive enough. This constant shifting of the goalposts creates chaos, making it impossible for anyone to know where they stand. Think of it like this. You're in a game where the rules are designed to confuse you. Every time you think you've figured out what's acceptable, the game changes. And suddenly, what you thought was fine is now a violation. Ben argues that this is how wokeness operates, and it's not just confusing, it's dangerous. When you're constantly walking on eggshells, unsure of what will get you canceled next, it creates a climate of fear and compliance. People stop thinking for themselves and just go along with whatever the woke priesthood says, because that's the safest way to survive. And much like a religious cult, Ben sees wokeness as having its own rituals for redemption and punishment. If you are woke enough, you're absolved of any past wrongs. But if you step out of line even once, you are excommunicated from the woke community with no chance of forgiveness. There is no room for nonce, no space for growth or redemption. Once you've been labeled as problematic, that's it. You're done. This rigid, unforgiving structure is what Ben finds most troubling about the woke movement. It doesn't allow for debate or second chances, just blind adherence to a set of beliefs that seem to change on a whim.
What the left likes to do with this sort of thing is they say, if you are civil, you will go along with what we are saying. They are not calling for civility, they are calling for surrender. From the very people who are out there shouting trans genocide, you will respect us,
When Ben Shapiro talks about the woke crowd, he describes them as a kind of merciless mob that operates with one simple rule. If you step out of line, you're done. There's no room for apologies, no path to redemption. Once the mob has labeled you as problematic, that's it. You're effectively canceled, and there's no coming back, no matter how minor the mistake or how long ago it happened. It's harsh, and according to Ben, it's one of the most dangerous aspects of woke culture.
I think that what bothers me is when folks assume that a disagreement means that they can ascribe animus, anger, hatred, wish for violence to me.
He often brings up examples of cancel culture to make his point. Whether it's a celebrity who tweeted something controversial a decade ago, or someone who unknowingly violated an ever-changing social norm, the outcome is usually the same. The mob rushes to condemn, social media explodes, and the person is cast out from public favor. It doesn't matter if they apologize or explain themselves. When the damage is done, there is no forgiveness. Ben sees this as incredibly harmful, not just to individuals, but to society as a whole. If there is no room for mistakes, no space for people to grow and change, how can anyone expect to move forward? In Ben's view, this kind of rigidity makes wokeness a destructive force. Society thrives on the idea that people can learn from their mistakes, improve, and become better versions of themselves. But if cancel culture is the standard, where one mistake can ruin someone forever, that chance for personal redemption disappears. It creates an environment where people are too afraid to speak their minds or take risks because they know the mob is always watching, ready to pounce on any perceived misstep. This lack of forgiveness doesn't just stifle personal growth, it also creates a sense of fear and confusion. With wokeness, as Ben argues, the rules are constantly shifting, and the boundaries of what's acceptable keep moving. How can anyone keep up when what was acceptable yesterday might be a cancelable offense tomorrow? This uncertainty leaves people tiptoeing around every conversation, unsure of what might trigger the next wave of outrage. And for Ben, that's a recipe for societal stagnation. When people are more concerned about avoiding the mob than engaging in honest dialogue, meaningful progress becomes impossible. So, what are your thoughts on this? Let us know in the comments below.